lives of many of us, me including many of you. How many of you have been touched by Dr. Ron Paul? We owe much of the success of the freedom movement, liberty movement, to this great man and what he has done. I remember I was a mere young child in 1988 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Trying to record something.
When I had a chance to vote for president. He was able to run for president, although I didn't see the election turn out the way we wanted.
Yeah, sure.
However, we tried again. I remember in 2008.
Today. A little bit tired now, but yeah, we definitely do it.
And registered as a Republican in the state of Florida. He had to be a member, in order to vote in that thing, hoping that it would take place. Well, we saw that didn't happen in 2012. We didn't see the political victory, but we did see victory. And we're experiencing it tonight because there are millions of people that are now in the liberty movement because of what this man has done. Personally, I've had the opportunity to work with him one-on-one before in other venues. Had a chance to see him and how he interacts, and I've got to tell you, he is genuine on camera, and he is genuine and kind and intelligent off camera, one-on-one. He is truly a great man. And we here at Anarchapulco are proud to welcome Dr. Ron Paul.
We have a ways to go because those in charge happen not to like liberty. They like government, and that makes the big challenge bigger than ever. That is a real problem for all of us who want to live our own lives. And when we start with with the premise that we own our life, we should own everything we make and create. Does that mean we don't have any sovereignty? Yes, we have sovereignty. The sovereignty of the individual, making the decision. And that, to me, is the most important thing. You know, people ask me, so how did I get started? How did I mix medicine in with economics? And it was from early on. It seemed like I was always fascinated with economics, and I was bewildered when I took an economics course in college. It didn't make any sense. And then in the 1960s, I discovered Austrian economics, and it was a real eye-opener to find the people who, and I kept thinking, there's somebody that agrees with me out there. And the whole thing was, of course, I was agreeing with them because the Austrian economists, they were leading the charge, as all philosophical movements are, and have to have intellectual leaders. So, but I came across it, and of Austrian economics, I was most fascinated with monetary policy. And so reading in the 60s, and during that time, it was the Cold War was going on. I was in the military, the Vietnam War was going on. And the people were, pretty struggling with war and the finances. But the monetary policy fascinated me, and that is when the falling apart of Bretton Woods, which was August 15, 1971. I think it was probably one of the biggest monetary in history, at least in the 20th century. That is a big event, and we are still hearing the consequences. It was really the final blow to the dollar, which will destroy the dollar and which will require an alternative system to what we have today. Though I was interested in the monetary policy, it didn't take too long to figure out, put it all together. The monetary policy and the control of money, which they always have, governments always want monopoly control, legal tender laws, you're not allowed to compete, there's competition. That if you see that, the purpose, of course, for governments to get control of the money supply and control, interest rates and all these things is to maintain their control, their power, and their monopoly, economic power, power overseas, financing debt, financing wars, financing welfare, financing people who want to rip the rest of the people off, like the military-industrial complex. Monetary policy, really, if you know what it's all about, you know that if you have any qualms with the government, that nothing happens today in our government if they didn't have this sinister approach through the Federal Reserve to finance this evil that we have put up with for so long. And this is not a new debate, because it was there at the time of the founding of the country. They had just gone through the runaway inflation of the continental dollar. That's why they're talking about not worth the continental. And of course, Jefferson took one position and Hamilton another. I didn't see the movie Hamilton, but I can imagine making a movie and praising somebody like Hamilton, because he was really the obstacle to any effort that was being made to try to preserve and promote a true republic. But there was an argument that went on, and they did not put authority in the central bank, the first central bank in the early years, but it came up real fast. It always, had the first national bank, lasted for 20 years, and then there was another national bank. There was always a set of antagonism. Then before the Fed, we had Lincoln having the greenback operation and more banking regulations. But in our lifetime, and what we are witnessing right now is a result of what happened 100 years ago. 100 years ago, Dad knew, a little over 100 years, it must be 105 now. 1913. If 1971 was important for the conclusion of the Bretton Woods and this total destruction of the gold standard, the 1913 was a year that ushered in a couple bad things. Like the IRS. We don't need an income tax. We didn't have it. One reason why I specifically don't like the income tax, not that I like any of them, but the income tax endorses a principle that's wrong. It endorses the principle that the government owns you. That it owns everything you make. It's yours. Instead of it being yours, you can spend it the way you want. The government will tell you exactly how much you can keep under what condition. So the only thing that comes close to it that we're not experiencing right now, and that is the military grant. Taking up somebody who owns you, we're going to put you in war, unconstitutional, illegal, stupid, and all these things that people are hauled off. Now we just hypnotize them and brainwash them to go anyway, which is almost as bad. But none of it would happen if they didn't have this sinister way of financing things. And this is why I think people, find it fascinating to study and talk about monetary history. The fact that when I first went to Congress in 1976, when I would vote, nobody couldn't figure out what the pattern was all about. They always doing this and why are you doing that? And they never had much talk about the Federal Reserve, and they weren't talking about monetary change. But that has changed. So when people get discouraged that they're not having any impact, just think now. The House has voted 4 different times on the bill. It was sort of a political stunt. They voted 4 times out of it, which means the Senate is changing, the people are changing. They were telling their congressmen, why don't you just look at it over? They have no intention of doing it because the ball game's over. If the people know exactly what to do at the Federal Reserve, especially with this last bailout, $15 trillion, and that sure helped the poor people. They lost their jobs and they lost their houses and they had to recover it. Another significant event that's happened since 1971 is that the wages have been frozen. Essentially, no progress of real wages. Real wages do this. Nominal wages do this. They go up. But the real wages don't go up. And this is contributing to something that I consider one of the cultural problems that we have today. And that is the discrepancy in the distribution of wealth. I think this is all the consequences of big government spending and the Federal Reserve System, and we in saying, well, we all want to be socialists now. It's a social problem, and it's a big mess for us all.
Okay,
But I don't think people really understand exactly why people are getting poorer. You know, when we have inflation, which we have a lot more than they get to, the people always cry. People say, well, the problem is I don't have enough money. And the prices are too high, so give me more money. And governments, know that people are getting restless, so they give them more money, which they create out of thin air, which was the problem to begin with. That way it always ends badly. Now, the message I have tonight is that we're hearing that stage that all of this mess is going to end badly. But the purpose that I have for going about and going to Congress and speaking out is there's an answer to this, and it's not complicated. Why should the principles of liberty be all that complicated? Which you want as long as you don't hurt anybody. That's not complicated. A lot of people generally understand that. People know that they're not supposed to steal from their neighbor. They're not supposed to hurt people. You're not supposed to, put penalties on people who have a different religious belief or no religious belief. And so that goes along pretty good. But once you get into economic matters, that's a different story. They want to make everything fair and equal, and things are unequal mainly because there's a government program. Instead of correcting that, instead of not only auditing the Fed, get rid of the Fed, they keep making the problem worse and worse. I think that over the years, I'm not a technology person. I don't know the computer system like maybe most of you do. But when I saw the internet coming in, I found it to be so fascinating because I still use it. I use it for my program, use it. And distribution of information has just been really, really good. But I've lost a little bit of enthusiasm and found out that CIA participated in it. They regulate it. They monitor what I put on my website. They don't let me do certain things. And so that is not an example of true free markets and liberty. It's an example of corporatism, a combination of government and corporation. That is a big evil in this country. People are so susceptible to it. And we have an administration, let me tell you, endorses that principle to the hill. Government and big business are supposed to work together. And whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they do the same thing. And the one thing that I learned in Washington over those years is that there is no two-party system. Somebody once asked me, well, don't you think the answer is to have a third party? I said, no, we should get a second party. Support reform boards, that's they're all for the board. And whether it's Fox or CNN, they're all for the board. But what about this budget? I've always complained about it. I never saw it to be so blatant. They were having Paulo out there, so 4 people go up in the room, and it's a divvy up the loot. We won't tell anybody, we'll just put it out here, we'll pack it. They'll vote for it. They won't answer the question. It should not, but they did have. And Pelosi one time said, I think what we should do is get together and we'll give you military money and you give us welfare money. The whole thing is both sides want military money and both sides want welfare money, and all of us support the wealthy people who are ripping us off. Ultimately, I think one of the major problems we face today is cultural Marxism. And there's a lot of talk about it, but it's very, very real. And the goal is to destroy culture and cause chaos. And anything that they can do, they might even attack Democrats, and they might attack Republicans. Whatever creates chaos, and out of that chaos, those who believe in one world government and a utopian system, then they move in to take care of the people. So people dying and being starved, as long as the ultimate goal is utopia. Just think the utopianism of the communist system, how many millions of people died that way? But yeah, we're involved right now in this, and it's devastating. But you know, I really have some good news for you. Today, you spoke, you might have missed it. You know, the special prosecutor revealed the bad guys. They found out that there are 13 bad Russians interfering with our election. Now we know who the enemy is. That's why we need more nukes. Today I'm pleading for more nukes. Now we only have 750. The Russians have 700 something. But we need more nukes and refurbishing $1.2 trillion we have to do that for. I'll tell you what, we need a lot less of those. We need a lot less of weapons. But we won't have any less of those things unless we have better foreign policy. And foreign policy is not complex. It's simple. Most of the people I talk to, when I go to campuses, they acknowledge it because they see the burden is based on it. And that is to get out of the business totally, completely of pretending that we have the wisdom, the monetary, or the morality to police the world. The audiences when I was campaigning for the president, I was not well received, but I would say, it's not complicated. Just bring the truth home. That's all you need to do. And I frequently use Korea as an example of our security. When we went into Korea, I was in high school. One of my coaches was redrafted in World War II. I went over there and didn't come home. And then, here it is. This was the example, really the first time that we decided that war did not need to be endorsed by the American people. You know, this World War II was endorsed by the people, lasted, 2.5 years, 3 years. We go to war in a different manner. We've been in Afghanistan for 17 years. It's totally insane what we're doing. But we went over there in the early 50s, and you stayed and said hundreds of billions of dollars were drawn this artificial line. And people say, well, what's going to happen if you get out? I don't know. We got out of Vietnam and things worked out a lot better. Total disaster, total immoral war. We lost 60,000 men and women. We lost a lot of people. A lot of money. And that was after the French lost millions. But that doesn't even count the millions of Vietnamese we killed. And then we finally got out. And what happened? Was there a domino effect and the communist movement spread over and took over all the Middle East? No. Vietnam became more westernized. I mean, they're westernized enough now you can get on an airplane and fly there and do business in Vietnam. Just think of how much was won in peace and how much was destroyed in war, when the wars are useless, immoral, and unconstitutional. And it's time for the American people to say enough is enough. We need a foreign policy where we don't endorse war and get rid of the machine that finances war, which is the monetary system and the Federal Reserve. And my theme of what I talk about is the end of an era, the end of our era, the end of our income, and that's all good news. don't know because the erosion is there. But one thing that people did not predict, there has to be somebody that made a prediction, but not many. Nobody anticipated. I was watching news in 1989, but how many people would say, hey, you know, next year the Soviet system's gone. But the next year the Soviet system was essentially gone. I mean, who would have ever dreamed that Gorbachev would come along and just let it fade away? But it wasn't because all of a sudden they became knowledgeable. It was pragmatic because they were flat out broke. And this country is flat out broke. And if you want to really study what's going on, just look at the debt that's floating around. How many bonds and how many obligations that we have, unsecured obligations, trillions and trillions. The world is still filled with debt. When it comes to unemployment, they give you the U3, and there's a U6 figure, which they say one is 3, 4, and the other one is 6. So those are government figures. But shadow stats, they have a figure that comes up. It's real interesting. The government statistics in the last several years has gone down, like they announce every day. But shadow stats takes care of everybody who's dropped out of the workforce, or they're partially employed, they really don't have a good job, they're underemployed. And that number hasn't gone up. It stays steady, 22%. 22% of our people. And that's why there's a lot of people out there suffering. Because if you just listen to me, nobody should be complaining. We're doing great. And we shouldn't worry about it. But a lot of people are worried, and that goes to this whole thing that I'm concerned about. It is the social conflict that is coming, and it'll get violent, and it's going to get much worse. We end up with a lot of violence, and that, of course, was in the news this week, and people wanted to say, what do you think about what's going on with the schools and the kids getting killed? Oh, it's just horrible, horrible. So immediately, within hours, I turned the liberal station on and said, guns did it. We've got to get rid of the guns. And the others would come up with some others say, get rid of the guns, it's all the guns. I got to thinking about this. I've been doing programs on the militarization of the police. The police, probably a lot of good people. There's a lot out there. When you see a video, seeing a kid run away that's not armed and shot in the back, you know there's something wrong. How many liberals get out and say, it's the gun, it's the gun. Let's take the guns away from the government.
It will be a more modest approach. I mean, the Soviet system
didn't become more communistic. It was communism economically didn't work. That's why they went to social communism and Marxism. And they had a different approach. So this will come to an end. There are two things that happened that I remember clearly economically that were sort of surprising. One was right after, I was just interested in politics, and I went to a function of business leaders in Houston, and Ford had just been put in office, and Nixon was something out, and there was somebody coming down there from the cabinet, and there was rampant inflation. You know, interest rates were real high, inflation was probably 7-8%, who knows at that particular time, but they were worried about it. But they didn't have the vaguest idea, nor would they admit it, maybe they knew it wouldn't admit it, but they said, oh, you know what we have to do? We need a rally to rally the people to create, for the people to charge less and to pay less money. So Ford, what he did, somebody must remember, you can find them, the wind button. Everybody was supposed to put a wind button. Whip inflation now, and that was their solution to the problem. Now the interesting thing is, I was at this thing, and it was sort of the day this program was started. It was within a week. There was a statistic came out that inflation was irrelevant. What happened is we just tipped over into a downturn in the economy, and there was a recession coming, so they had to whip up the inflation. So they printed the money again. But the other incident that came rather quickly, although I had even been talking about this more so about what was happening during the first decade of this century. But in 2008 is when it was announced. It was announced with Lehman Brothers. And there wasn't a lot of things leading up to it. The fundamentals were there, the deficits were there. Everybody should have known it was coming. Before that came, and that ushered in, QE1, QE2, QE3, QE4. They're still, what are we going to do with all the money? Oh, give it to Wall Street. They can make some more money with it. So that is a corrupt system, and most people in Washington I knew, believe it or not, give them the benefit of that, were well-intended economists. They really thought they were doing good. Oh, but they had to make exceptions because if you cut too much spending, then it's too harmful. So it was that kind of thinking. But they don't sit around thinking how they're going to do harm. But I do know that most people, when they get into higher levels of office, become sociopaths. They don't care. People responsible for the mass killing. We can count our people and how many people lost their limbs, and that's a big number. But we don't ever count the people that we butchered for no reason at all. We went 6,000 miles and we were asked to bomb and kill a lot of other people over there. It makes really no sense at all. Just think, somebody asked, I was talking with somebody about this once, and why did these wars get started? I said, I'll tell you one thing it isn't. The teenagers and the guys 18 to 24 who get together in the United States and get together and say, you know what, let's say we're in the 60s, we get together and say, I think what we should do is get together and go over there and fight the Vietnamese. Or we'll go down to the Middle East, and the teenagers and young people over there go. Young people who have to die and fight get conned into it. And the people who promote it are the people who never have to go. How many chicken hawks have you ever run into? They brag and all this stuff, and they duck it's okay to duck the draft if you did it on principle. But to duck the draft and then really work hard to push your sons over there, or tax you for it, makes you pay for it. And this is long term, and this is why it's going to end. It's going to be the debt. How do we notice on a daily basis on how far along we are? I would say one of the best ways will be the dollar, because they will lose control of the dollar. And the dollar's been down for a year and a half now. It's probably 12-14%, which is significant. But and it's a big deal because we're still the wealthiest and the strongest, and wealth will take hold. And military strength usually conveys some strength to your currency. So that is something that you can watch, and it's going down, and eventually we will not be able to pay our bill. Those they're kicking around, and then they're starting to raise interest rates. You know, next week, just like what happened with Lehman Brothers, next week they'll say, "Oh, the recession is back again," you know, and we have to, you know, inflate. Oh, should we stop, reversing QE? We have to inflate some more, and they will do that, and it's not going to help at all. And the interest rates are still going to go up because today there was an interesting article that said, you know, everybody said, "Oh, China's not buying as much anymore." Well, China's a big player because they have a lot of our dollars. They have to watch, you know, don't ruin the dollar too fast if they lose a lot. But they were showing the Japanese were selling a lot of our dollars. And here interest rates are going up these last couple of weeks. That's supposed to push the dollar up. But it has not, because the burden of debt, the burden of the bond are so outrageous that they can't do that. You know, Illinois is in trouble. You know about that? They owe $127 billion in pension funds. Extravagant pension funds promised the politicians did it, and they've been having so much trouble. So they're floating a bond issue for $104 billion at fixed interest rates for 27 years. Can you imagine anybody buying a bond that had any brains? But maybe the Federal Reserve will buy those bonds. They do all stuff like that. But they thought it was necessary, they would probably go and do that. But it's just absurd. That will finally end. And the end of an era will be significant. The question is, are we going to live in a freer society, or is it going to be more totalitarian? I happen to go in the direction of a lot less government. I want to get that not the village. I'm not too aggressive with guns, so I'm not depending on that. But I understand something about ideas, and I hope I'm not incorrect, and I hope I'm not naive. But ideas are powerful. An idea is not as calm is here to stop. And I believe that sincerely. So if the freedom movement and the libertarian message comes, and I think it has to be universal. You know, I don't think it has to be just in one place. It doesn't happen that way. Because when you look at economic intervention and central banking and militarism, it's worldwide. But if the idea is to win out, it will be universal. I say, will it be the Republicans that will lead the charge? Heavens no. They're not going to lead the charge. But if, because, you know, Nixon's famous statement when he put on the wage and price report was, we're all Keynesians now. And he was absolutely right. It wasn't just the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans used to complain about the Democrats. We're all Keynesian now, we all are. But someday, what we have to do is have the people wake up worldwide, wherever we go, and say that liberty is better than tyranny. And that should be all our goal. Because you still have to have the majority. How are you going to do it? How are you going to endorse government if you don't have that majority? Well, the idealists, the people who have ideas and promote ideas, are always a small number. It wasn't 51% of the Russian people who decided they want communism that killed and did all those horrible things at that time. No, it's a thing that people have to do. Because if you get 10% of the people talking about what we're talking about, and then educating another generation, that is why I understand there may be a few homeschoolers here that I put some time into homeschooling. If you want to get some help, you've got to get them out of those government schools. It's dangerous. People who look at our schools and look at us as prison, and they don't have the satisfaction. When you don't have a free society, you don't have satisfaction that you're doing something. No matter what our qualities are and our abilities are, do something. If you're creative in any way, in whatsoever, there's satisfaction. But what the society we have today, there's no satisfaction, and then you mix a few other things in, and it all gets to be a mess. But I think that alternative non-government schools is very important, and that's growing. I believe that some of the things that are most troublesome in our country has always been the totality of a program. For instance, the last one, that is, I hope is fading a little bit, it is that you have no choice but to go with Obamacare. The mandate, you don't go, we're going to tax you. If you didn't buy this product, or we say it's so wonderful. How are you going to get money? Well, we can't tax people. The Supreme Court says you can't penalize somebody for not buying a government product. Oh, but the Supreme Court, they're wise. They say, but you can tax them. So they converted that. That's what the Supreme Court said. It was going to be just a tax, and that's how it happened. But it was everybody had to join. And back in the 80s, there was a big fight over homeschooling that I participated in because in Texas it was bad. They were closing down homeschools, and they still will close down homeschools if we're not careful. But in the midst of all that mess, if you just legalize the right to get out of it, and you can help it. You need the right to get out of medical care. You need to get out of education. And you need the right to get out of the banking system and the model. But there's a fallacy in talking about rights in that manner, because I think one thing I object to is designating a right to this, right to this. There's a group that has this right, another group has this right. Rights are individual, and you as an individual have a right to do whatever you want if you don't hurt people. The concepts of freedom are always evolving, and they're at a point now where I think we have a better understanding of monetary policy, but we're always in conflict, in competition with the authoritarians. But I think there's been significant movement in the right direction. I've always wanted to believe and still hopeful that technology should be helpful to our cause. And that's why I was hopeful, about the internet and that this technology would be helpful. But then I looked and I wrote a little book about my thoughts on the war. And I thought, what about all the technology we had, 100, 150 years? So much of it has been used by the government to kill more people. But it could be used in another manner. If we had our society that we'd like, they wouldn't be wasting and creating the carnage of using technology to kill people, and it should be to promote everybody's individuality and what they like. One thing that I really am attracted to the issue of liberty is for a personal reason, and it's simply that I feel a personal obligation to strive for excellence, and that we as individuals should sort of strive for virtue too. But you can't do it with government. When the government takes that role over, and they're going to make you virtuous, and they're going to make you outstanding and excellent, they're going to put you into the schools, and they're going to dictate and tell you what you can put in your mouth and everything else. We understand that they're not supposed to tell us what we can read. We understand they don't have the right to tell us what religion we have to be, or if we don't want a religion. But why is it that so many people have just rolled over when governments have come along and we're going to tell you everything you can put into your mouth or your skin or your throat or whatever? Oh, but they're dangerous. You don't think religious beliefs sometimes can be dangerous? You don't think intellectual beliefs are dangerous? Sure, there's some danger. But people have a right to take a risk. The big thing is, if people don't realize that want to be safe and secure, is they have to assume the responsibility of what they do. If things don't go well, oh yeah, I want my freedom. But if they don't go well, you can't go to the government and say, bail me out. people will come up after I talk and say, okay, I believe you, what should I do? And my answer is really complex. Do whatever you want. Everybody has a role. And I also firmly believe that if you come down to the conclusion that you can put this together and understand the principle of liberty, and you think it's better than any other group in the world ever understood, I believe you have a moral obligation to do something and spread that message. Some way or another. One-on-one, help other people, get political action, all that, whatever it is to promote it, but it has to be for promoting the cause of liberty. I want to thank you very much for being with me.
The true few public servants we've ever had in Washington, D.C.
Good to get a reaction.
And we all appreciate what you've done. I have a very short, specific question for you. A, can libertarians take over the Republican Party? Because I see little hope for the Democratic Party, which is dominated by socialists and communists. And B, if libertarians can take over the Republican Party, how can we go about doing that?
I'm not very partisan, and even though I've spent a lot of years in politics, I'm really not into that very much. What I mentioned is my answer is an ideological struggle, and the ideas are endorsed by people. It's a prevailing idea. If liberty becomes prevailing, everybody in Congress will, reflect that. Today they reflect the education system and all that's going on. So, but the answer also is, it's difficult. I was in the Republican Party, a couple others are. If you think we've done some good, it's okay. We work that way. But it's not going to be the transition. We're not going to hold, it's not going to last long enough for us to get enough people in there to vote our way out of this mess. The mess is going to come down on our heads, and we better do it.
To mention, we have two quick announcements here. A small blue and black Hyundai backpack has been lost. If you find that, please bring it over. And also, we have a platinum card. These are important, aren't they, Paul? Yeah, American Express Platinum, and this is for Michael Dupree. Michael, you're probably wondering where it is. Today is your lucky day. I'm not going to touch that for you. And then you know, okay, it's been touched by Ron Paul. Next question.
So you told us the answer to the question that many of us have, which is to do what you want in order to gain freedom. Does that stop at the political process being a form of violence in many of our eyes, or is there any legitimacy to the political process? You're probably the only person that could convince anybody that there's any value to the political process.
No, I would mention that's right. The rule is do what you want, but you can't initiate harm. We can't initiate commercial violence. Non-aggression, otherwise it doesn't work. And that's really the hardest part for you to understand. We did make the point that yes, most of us can understand it. The government doesn't understand it. You and I can't do it, they roar our feet to the fire. Why is it that we tolerate the government doing exactly the same thing? They come with guns and take one group, give them another, and tell us what to do. So, no, I think that you do what you want with the one big rule.
Dr. Paul, there's one area of technology that's increasing, well, there's lots of areas of technology that are increasing exponentially, but progress in medical science, I would like myself and you to be around in 50 or 100 years So I'm wondering if you've looked into life extension technologies, including cryonics, experimental suspended animation.
You know, I got out of medical school in 1961. We didn't even study it. I don't have an overall opinion about that, but as long as the experiments are normal.
What is your opinion on laws like our cabotage laws and laws like the Jones Act? Just about every country in the world has laws that are similar to those. Our cabotage laws and are you familiar with the Jones Act?
Say that again.
Our cabotage laws, these are laws that, like an airline, a foreign airline that wants to bring passengers into the U.S. can only drop them off in a couple, 3 different places, but they can't transport goods or people inside the U.S. a foreign airline. And that deals with airlines, a lot of the cabotage. And then you have laws like the Jones Act for merchant shipping. Can ships bring product, foreign ships come to the country, they're allowed to discharge here and here, then just pick up and go. But they can't do shipping from one port to another port, they can't pick up and discharge. Those types of laws.
Your question then is,
How does that fit in with, open borders, stuff like that, Is that under control?
Conditions today, I do not see how you can have it. There's another way to do it. Somebody replayed something I did for the Libertarian campaign in 1988. And I said, quit subsidizing. You don't have to be thrown out, but no easy ride, no welfare, and no citizenship. I'm like, what country do you walk into? Walk in, and I'll say, no, I think that in practical sense, you're not on the burden of the world. I mean, it's a real mess. So we have a mess mainly because we have way too much government involved, and we have gotten to the point where my grandparents came over and they had to have some option, they got a job, and they took care of themselves. But they didn't want welfare, they didn't have welfare. It's a welfare, it's just subsidies that make a difference, and it is a burden. In many ways, if you think about it, it could be a close analogy, if they come in and they usurp your wealth and your privacy, it's almost like saying, like the rich did, and we're going to put something in your house. Nobody would go with that, but it is our country a house. And right now, it's more a house than a no man's land.
next question.
All right, thank you very much, everybody here in Acapulco. It's fucking amazing. Oh my God! Please don't know Paul in the house teaching everybody, sharing the knowledge. Now, excuse me for screaming. We need to roll please. Thank you so much for your knowledge and sharing. We are like a bunch of fishes thinking together as a big brain, and now we're merging. This is the merging. Okay? So please, thank you very much so much, Mr. Rompo. What is your opinion as a president? What would you do to help Venezuela and stop the confrontation? What's going on? What's your thoughts on Venezuela? How would you fix it? What do you think?
Thank you so much. My interpreter said, what do I think? No, what do I think about Venezuela? I think it's a mess because they have the desert. It's a country where they have it, but it's not my business. It's not your business. I can't share any truth. But it's really a prohibition for you to go there and help somebody if you want to. If you want to help them, it's not like you're amoral completely controlled because a lot of places you're sympathetic to one side or the other, but you don't have the right to make a decision on how your neighbor's son's going to die or your family next door is going to pay for this. There has to be a limit. So I don't think the government should be involved, but we should remove prohibitions against all people.
Two more questions.
Thank you, Mr.
here. I have a very simple question. Send you some cryptograms.
How would they send you cryptocurrency, Bitcoin or whatever?
Yes.
How would they do that?
I have that.
Oh, the foundation. You know, foundation, we call it Google. You know, you
It's
find
for my educational activity, that's what my business is.
Final question.
Alright, so my question is, I speak for a lot of people in this room. Is there any way we can just get our picture shaking your hand? What are we, you know, is there any way that can happen? I know there's a dinner thing, but you know, I wanted just get my picture shaking your hand. Is that a possibility? Can that happen?
Yes.
We might be able to come see us afterwards. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ron Paul.
Thanks a lot.